Good morning, students. We've been looking into Bhakti and Sufi traditions, and we saw that there was a whole set of people who started, definitely the Muslim saints, who gradually felt that Islam had become too much about religious bureaucracy and it was stifling the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual thirst of common people. And then they started because they felt that now Islam was much about the politics of caliphs and different kings and rulers and empires, and this is something which made them dissatisfied. And then they thought of charting an independent course, and not a different course, but an independent course to reach the glory of Allah. And that is what they started doing through devotional music, through poems, through chantings, all of that, which all these things were never mentioned in Quran and their hadith is such that this is the path of reaching the Almighty. And then these were the people who started practicing their own different methods of doing it. And as we all know, something which they were doing, the Indian saints and the sadhus had been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. And this is exactly the reason why, as I even mentioned yesterday, that Sufism developed in the Indian subcontinent, in not in the place of birth of Islam, which was in the Arabic Peninsula or West Asia. Because India, it could have Sufism could have developed only in India, precisely because of the reason that we had been doing and practicing these rituals and these methods for centuries and centuries and centuries. So Sufism was heavily influenced by our culture and our traditions, and because we had been doing bhajans and uh, great poems, whether you talk about, and particularly in South India, where you have the whole Sangam literature, which is stunning in its glory and greatness. If you ever get a chance to even read its English translation, you would be amazed. I wonder how fantastic it would be when if you can actually someone can read Tamil and understand it. So today we've seen yesterday just the devotionalism, ziyarat and Qawwali, because we saw that yes, just the gharana, as we call it, Chishtiya gharana, that was one which gave us great saints of Sufism in the Indian subcontinent. And you today find a lot of dargahs of those saints in Pakistan as well as India. Um, and we also had seen that Jahan Ara, the daughter of Shah Jahan, had also been, very much drawn into the Sufism and the liberal form of Islam. Languages and communication, Amir Khusro and the Qal. So Amir Khusro, who has not heard of Amir Khusro? We all have heard of Amir Khusro because he's the one who is considered to be the father of Qawwal and the Qawwali, the Qawwal form of singing and devotion. And he's the one who is considered to be, and that is the reason why if you ever visit the Dargah of the great saint of Sufi saint Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia Sahib in old Delhi, you would find, because Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia's disciple was Amir Khusro, and if you visit the shrine of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia Sahib, you would find great Qawwals who come from across India and even Pakistan, who just play their Qawwali and then they sing and they sing in the glory of the Aulia Sahib and Allah, and you would see hundreds of people just listening to that music spellbound. So if you ever can, the same thing also happens in Ajmer Sharif, Hazrat Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti Sahib's Dargah, and you would see Qawwals from around the country and even across the borders from Pakistan rather. They come here and they consider it one of their lifetime's goals and targets to at least in their lifetime play once in these dargahs, because these dargahs and these saints are extremely revered and considered to be holy. So, languages and communication. It was not just in Sama that the Chistis adopted local languages. In Delhi, those associated with the Chishti Silsila conversed in Hindavi, the language of the people. Other Sufis, such as Baba Farid, composed verses in the local language, which were incorporated even in the Guru Granth Sahib. Yet, others composed long poems or manasvis to express ideas of divine love using human love as an allegory. For example, the Prem Akhyan love story Padmavat, composed by Malik Muhammad Jayasi, revolved around the romance of Rani Padmini and Ratna Sen, the king of Chittor. Their their trials were symbolic of the soul's journey to the divine. Such poetic compositions were often recited in hospices, usually during summer. A different genre of Sufi poetry was composed in and around the town of Bijapur, Karnataka. These were short poems in Dakhani, that's how you would pronounce it, a variant of Urdu attributed to Chisti Sufis who lived in this region during the 17th and 18th centuries. These poems were probably sung by women while performing household chores like grinding grain and spinning. Other compositions were in the form of Luri Nama or lullabies. Guys, this is the same. This is nothing but Lori, जिसको हम कहते हैं Lori, right? And Shadi Nama or wedding songs. It is likely that the Sufis of these regions were inspired by the pre-existing Bhakti tradition of the Kannada Vachanas of the Lingayats and the Marathi Abhangs of the sons of Pandarpur. Guys, the Marathi Abhangs are primarily, these are songs and poems which are dedicated to Lord Vishnu. Okay, Lord Vishnu, and when sons of Pandarpur, because Pandarpur is the place. It's a village now. Definitely, it's a town now in Maharashtra, which is very famous for one of the variants, if I may say, of Lord Vishnu, one of the forms of Lord Vishnu. Here, Lord Vishnu is known as Vithoba. Okay, and there are many temples that are dedicated to Vithoba. Though they say Vithoba, it is nothing but Lord Vishnu. And some of the great Marathi saints have come from Pandarpur area. Okay, and all singing great poems and hymns and bhajans in the glory of Lord Vithoba. And just to add a bit of trivia here, about few years ago, Bharat Ratna was given to the great classical exponent Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, of Hindustani classical music. And Pandit Bhimsen Joshi has sung many abhangs. Okay, abhangs, that is songs, Marathi songs in praise of Vithoba, that is Lord Vishnu, that are stunning in rendition, amazing. So if you ever get a chance, do listen to these abhangs sung by Pandit Bhimsen Joshi. Okay, now Sufis and the state. Uh, a major feature of the Chishti tradition was austerity. That is, austerity is basically you lead a very simple and a pious and a very frugal life without any trappings of ostentation. कोई दिखावा नहीं, एक सरल सी सुगम सी एक सादी भरी जिंदगी जिसको कहते हैं, एंड जैसे एक चादर, एक दो तीन बर्तन खाने के लिए, and that's what your life is, and rest of the time you are just spending in meditation and singing about the glory of your Lord. So that is what the Chishti saints used to do, and their even the disciples used to do. Was the tradition was austerity, including maintaining a distance from worldly power. And students, you have to understand, well, there's very important reasons why these saints were considered to be very revered. That is the Chishti saints, and at least some of them, of course. Yeah. You have to understand that there were a lot of, in terms of Sufi families as well. It was not just that there was one Chishti family. There were other Sufi families as well, who had their own traditions, who had their own styles, methodologies, approaches to divinity. But you have to understand that the Chishti tradition, or the Chishtiya Gharana, came on top because of one very important reason, that they used to stay away from the normal people. They did not accept any royal privileges. They didn't want to live in the fancy houses and fancy homes and palaces, which which the kings would always be requesting them to move into. There was, had they wanted, there was no dearth of golds and silvers, had they just wanted it. But these people would like to live in jungles and isolation, something which we all know that Indian saints had been practicing for thousands and thousands of years. Where even if you look into the television serials like Ramayana or Mahabharata, you would always see that the kings and the queens would go to some cave, some jungle somewhere, to meet some Maharshi and get their blessings and boons, because those Maharishis would never live inside the cities. They would always stay away from people. The ashrams and the greatest of the great kings would go to learn everything in those ashrams, stay there. Those ashrams were never in the middle of the town, right? We all know that. And this tradition was continued and taken forward even by the Sufi saints, who, though from the Islamic strand of religious faith, they also carried the same tradition with them. Students. However, this was by no means a situation of absolute isolation from political power. The Sufis accepted unsolicited grants and donations from the political elites. The Sultan, in turn, set up charitable trusts, Akf, as endowments for hospices, and granted tax-free land. Students, because you have to understand, even the Sufi saints, they had hundreds of followers and students who lived with them, right? They lived with them. They learned the Sufi way of life, the Sufi teachings. They composed poems, poetry, sang qawwalis. So if you have 50, 100 people living with you, or even for that matter 200 people living with you, all that would need resources, right? You need to feed them. Even if you happen to be a very austere and a great teacher of Sufism and a great saint, but you still need to feed the people who now depend on you, because they have come from far-flung lands. They now live with you, stay with you, because in hope of learning something from you. So now it is your responsibility to ensure that they are fed properly, that you cannot just leave them somewhere at the mercy of nature. You have to ensure that they have shelter from rain, cold, summer heat, everything. So naturally they also needed some kind of patronage, right? So this was something which was given by the rich members of the community, irrespective of the fact whether they were Hindus or Muslims, whatever. It didn't matter to them at all. These rich people would give the give very generous donations and endowments, and the similar thing. And it was a similar situation with the rulers, who knew that these saints would not be taking money for their own personal gain because they wanted to buy a property in Noida or somewhere in Gurgaon, right? They would be spending each and every penny on these disciples and these students and the other teachers who were there in those places, so that more and more people within the society could learn the rich values of life, become more and more spiritual, and get into the devotion of the Almighty, lead a more disciplined and a better life. Thank you.